Welcome to the Javier Mendez Podcast. We are live from a bunch of different places. I'm in North Carolina. I'm going to keep saying that. Carolyn, you're where? Pennsylvania, you just said?
Philadelphia, at my daughter's.
Philadelphia. And of course, Javier is at AKA holding down the fort in San Jose in the good weather. I'm kind of envious. I want to move back already. No, I don't. I'm good. But anyways, Carolyn, a lot of people have seen you on the videos. Cornering fighters, but not a lot of people know your history. And I don't know, it's the first time with Javier, and you've been his secret weapon for wrestling and improving the wrestling of the fighters in the gym. And they sought you out. You weren't trying to like, hey, check out my magic system. They came for you, right?
No, definitely not.
So just tell us a little bit how you came to AKA.
No, it's very interesting. I was just sitting in my office one day at a wrestling facility about 3 miles from AKA, and I got a call from Daniel Cormier, and he said, hey, this is Daniel Cormier, and I wanted to know if I could bring some wrestlers over tonight to your practice. And I said, sure. I wasn't 100% sure who Daniel was. Honestly, I'd met Gray Maynard and Luke had been over before, but just, in the periphery. But I really wasn't looking to work with fighters. And Daniel came over that night, and I was coaching, and then he said, hey, I really would like you to bring John Hall and for you guys to come over to AKA to our Tuesday practices. And then that's how that started. I started coming over. Daniel showed up that next Saturday after he called me too. And we had about 200 kids wrestling in the room, and he had his little guys there. And I don't think he really knew before that I actually knew all those little guys, and that they'd been, coming over and working with me some too. And they were younger. And then I went to AKA and sat on the floor.
And Javier, you thought she was just there, just, watch one of the wrestlers like in support, and then you discovered she was a coach. Was that surprising to you?
Yeah, no, I just thought she was a friend of Daniel's. I got introduced to her. I said hello and pretty much left it at that. And because I'm never there on wrestling days, and that's usually Tuesdays is wrestling days. So Carolyn has been coming in, all that time, but I really haven't been watching. And it just happened to be that one day I was watching the wrestling, but the times before that, when I'd walk by, I see her, she's just standing there observing. I never say nothing, just observing. And I go, I used to think back then, wow, that's pretty amazing. She's got that kind of discipline to just watch wrestling. It's boring. It's boring as hell for me. I'm like, yeah, this thing's boring. I don't want to watch this. So I'm thinking she must be a super fan or super dedicated, and just, because to have that kind of attention, pretty amazing. So I'm watching her do this, and one day I was there on a Tuesday and actually watched a little bit more than usual. And she is watching, and all of a sudden she goes out in the middle of the floor, and I'm like going, oh, what the heck's she doing? She went out there to work with Tomas Diagni, and she showed him a little bit of a technical move that she was showing him because he was doing it wrong apparently. And next thing you know, he went out and did what she was showing him, and I was amazed. I went, holy crap, I thought she was just a fan. I didn't know she can actually teach. And to talk about you can't judge a book by its cover, it's like you never would have ever thought that. I think no one would ever thought that she was actually that good, because I just thought she was just a fan.
And then after that, Javier's letting anybody that's sitting in the lobby at AKA, yeah, go in there, show my guys some stuff.
Basically, the bottom line is Daniel Cormier is a very serious coach, and he's serious about wrestling. And trust me, if Carolyn wasn't worthy of anything, he wouldn't have her around whatsoever in the first place. So that alone, the fact that she actually could coach, the fact that Daniel had her there, you already know she's worthy, because, like I said, Daniel's a wrestling expert. He knows, and if she's there, she's there for a reason. And to be accepted by Daniel Cormier is a much bigger praise than to be accepted by me, because that's not my field. And I didn't acknowledge how good she was until I actually saw with my own eyes what she was doing.
Yeah, it's like he's pretty particular. It's no joke. He doesn't he doesn't give anybody a pass. He won't even let me hardly have an interview. So no, he's particular about coaches too. He's very particular.
Very particular, very competitive. He wants only the very best for those kids he cares about and for the fighters. And I think part of the reason when I first came, I didn't say very much was because I really had a lot of respect for everyone, but I noticed there was a lot of people in the periphery, and I'd been around high level wrestling, and my parents are politicians. So I've been around a lot of people who just, kind of wanted to be in it for them. And I really had no interest in that whatsoever. And I could see that a lot of the fighters sincerely cared, but they couldn't do what Daniel was teaching. They didn't know how to use their muscles in the right order. They just hadn't had the training. So I would say, hey, are you trying to do what Daniel's doing? And they'd say, yes. And I mean, I wanted to say, well, you're not, but I'm like, are you open to me showing you how you might even be able to do it even better? And then they would say, yes. And that's, I think, how that started, really.
Well, you've been working together a long time. How long has it been, Javier? Like 2011 or something?
Well,
I don't remember, but it's been a while, quite a while.
2012. I mean, Daniel still had hair. So, I mean, it was a really long time ago.
You said that. I didn't. Daniel's my boy. I ain't saying nothing.
The first time he came over and he and I are talking and someone took a picture. It's from the back of my head. And my hair is not gray then either, but from the back of my head. And he's looking forward. He's got this whole thing of hair. And my son said one day, look, Daniel used to have hair. So that's why I always remember it, for sure.
I want to share one of your videos real quick, kind of show people like what you do. It's hard to talk about it in words. Let's see if this plays through okay.
Now, this was a promotional video that was a woman from the Naval Academy did, because the Naval Academy guys were over wrestling with me on this day. And these guys here, it's Christy Creason and Drew Morgan. That's Chris, who Javi's known since he was 6 years old. And they're firing off their muscles in the correct order that corresponds to the majority of technique in wrestling. And I remember when one time I was at AKA and I was watching, and I'm not sure Daniel wasn't there, somebody else was coaching, and they were saying, in this situation, you do this in a fight. And I'm like, well, just in this situation? And they said, yes. I said, well, that's 15-minute, 25-minute fight, right? That's a lot of 10 seconds.
So how many of the fighters, I mean, when they come there, do they go straight to you, or they, Hav's like, go see them, or do they find you? How does that usually work at AKA?
Well, you got wrestling practice, which is Tuesdays, and you have Daniel usually used to teach it, or have one of his guys teach it. But then Carolyn would do her own program in the gym when she was here. She'd have her own little wrestling thing going on, and then the fighters that wanted to learn from her would go to her. But she was always a coach and will always be a coach at AKA. So anytime she wants to come in through the doors and coach whoever, that's on her. She's always going to be welcome here as a coach. But when it comes to the actual coaching, that was Daniel, but she would take care of some of the guys that wanted her attention, like a bunch of the kids that came by with train with her. And then one in particular UFC fighter was Alejandro Perez that benefited immensely from her tutelage. And he actually got to the point where I was very concerned about his wrestling or non-existent thereof wrestling, until he went with Carolyn. Then all of a sudden, I didn't give a shit who he went with on the wrestling credentials. Everything else mattered to me, but the wrestling credentials, I didn't care anymore, because I watched how Alejandro blossomed into, being able to deal with any kind of high level wrestling. And he did that. He proved that with Cody Salmon, right? He was,
sure.
Yeah, he proved.
And Matt Sanchez was a D1 wrestler also from Fresno.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Fullerton.
Yeah. So he proved, that her method is like extremely effective, because what he did to Cody when he picked him up and threw him over his head like Daniel Cormier did, I don't think that guy would have ever expected any guy that's not a non-wrestler could have done that to him. No way in hell could you convince me that was going to happen to me. So obviously when Alejandro lifted him, hoisted him up and dropped him, it was like shocker, and I don't think enough people really realized what just happened there. I did, and I knew he could do it, and I was pushing for Alejandro throughout the whole fight. Remember, Carol, I was pushing him throughout the whole fight. Use it. He didn't use it. Finally, when he did great. Then he only used it for half a round. It's like crazy, man. It's like, what the hell is the matter with you? You find something effective like that, you use it, and he didn't utilize it. And but she proved beyond a shadow of doubt her techniques work at the highest level, and she's still proving that now. And she's incredible. You just have to watch what she's doing, and that's it. Just watch what she's doing. Close your eyes, open your eyes and look at the technique.
We're gonna leave a bunch of those video links in the description of the YouTube, when I post this up. But you've worked also with Henry Cejudo,
Yes.
DC. I mean, the list goes on. Name some names. You've got some names.
Jermaine Durandame. I mean, I think there's just I think what you got to understand is that what happens is the guys come into the room, they want to do something, they don't know how to transition. One thing that I would always notice, I used to ask Javi if I could go watch him coach striking, because people could not transition well from striking to wrestling, or from jiu-jitsu to wrestling or striking. They didn't know how to change the level of their weight. And what would happen, I would ask the fighters in the room, I'd work with them, and then they would say, can I come work with you? When are you back? When can I come work with you? And I'd say, hey, I'm going to be doing this, this, and this. So we ended up having a lot of fighters who just show up at Wrestling Prep, which was my organization's separate name from AKA. They would show up and come to camps and train and do those kinds of things. And Henry Cejudo's brother, Angel, because Kelsey Campbell was an Olympian and she was over practicing at AKA, and that's how I met her when she was doing an internship at Stanford. And she said to Angel Cejudo, I think this person, her skill level is something we've never seen before in Olympic wrestling, and you need to meet her. So Angel sought me out at a national wrestling event, and he said, you have to come work with my brother. So after UFC Glendale, when Alejandro beat Matt Sanchez, which was really great, because at that fight, Daniel kept saying, he was announcing, hey, this Carolyn taught Alejandro how to wrestle. Nobody else is responsible for Alejandro, but Carolyn. But anyway, I went over the next day, and Henry was very reticent. He was eyeing me, like, who's this woman? And I had Aaron Gandara with me, who Alejandro knows, has come with us and helped us in many fights, workout partners. And then I started coaching. I didn't coach 5 minutes, and Henry said, stop. Somebody else run this clinic. She needs to come work with me. And after he beat Demetrius Johnson, after Alejandro, we were back in the, whatever you call that room after the fight, where we're all eating and stuff. I was sitting with Johnny Walker, and Henry came through, and he said, they were trying to hustle him. He said, you got to wait a second. And he said, I got to talk to Coach. He said, Coach, I never, as a Mexican man, would have ever suspected I would listen to a woman about wrestling who'd never wrestled, but you changed my perspective on wrestling. You changed my career. I would have never accomplished what I did if it wasn't for your input. So I think that, to me, that was very kind of him and very gratifying, but really not kind in the sense that I didn't deserve it. And I don't feel like I don't deserve to be recognized before what I do. But Javier Mendez was the first person who just said, whoever's the best person needs to be cornering this fight. Whoever's the best person needs to be coaching, not any of, anything else. And recently a woman was wanting to do a documentary, and she really wanted it to be about all the bad things that happened, the negative things that happened. And she had spoken with Javi, and she went to film me, and she said, now Javi told me he never told you this before. So I think Javi had texted me the night before and said, I told her a lot of things. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. So I think she wanted me to start crying or something, but she said, Javi said that people say, I want to work with Carolyn. And Javi said, if you work with her, she's got to corner you. And they would say sometimes in the past, oh, I don't really, I like the aesthetic of having a woman in the corner. And then Javi would say, well, then you can't work with her. True. Unbeknownst to me. Yeah. And she said, how did it make you feel? I said, relieved. Because if they are so narrow in their process, if that's where they are in their process of becoming a fighter, where they're still very narrow in the head, they're never going to understand what I'm saying, because they're going to be
not waste your time.
Don't waste my time.
Don't waste your time.
It's results, right? It's results. Javier cares about results, and I'm going to say something. Between Javier not being in wrestling, understanding the world of striking immensely, and then you going from regular wrestling, and then both of your techniques meeting in the middle for MMA, combat, grappling. That's different than wrestling.
Well, I think one thing a lot of people don't really fully understand, and which I have understood when she showed it to me, when she asked me one day if she could observe my training. You should want to get an idea as to what's going on. I said, absolutely. So she come in and watches the mitt session. After the mitt session, she goes, I got it, Javi. This is what I learned. And she showed me what she did. And I looked at it, I went, son of a gun. I go, what she just did was better than what I did. So even without coaching, striking, she looked at the dynamics, the mathematical equations of this and that, and she just went, do this. So she made what I did slightly better, which was amazing, because just the fact that if you even understood what I was teaching, that's amazing in itself. But she did better than understand it. She bettered it by 10, 20% better. So I was like, wow. So the idea of her being able to do anything in regards to anything that she set her mind to, it's there. She has the mind to do it. So it's just a matter of applying herself, and apparently, not apparently, but in this case, she loves the wrestling, but she can apply it to anything she wants. She can coach striking if she wants. She can coach boxing if she wants, because she understands the mechanics, and her mind is that good that she can make things work, and that's it. I mean, that's not too many people in the world can do that. I know I can't. I know I can't. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I can't do what she can do. I can't do it. I just don't have that mind.
It's interesting because not a lot of people walk up to Javier ever and show him something new. As far as him doing his job, they're like, okay, leave him be. So that must have been a hell of a thing for him to go, oh, yes. It was a big reveal. So you've enjoyed the striking and improving. Have you found, like, you started with regular wrestling, right? So yes. How did you find the transition to the, fighting takedowns, like the entries on a striker going for a takedown, overcoming kicks or punches or knees and all the different types of movements? Is this the same process as you looked at wrestling?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that in fighting, a lot of times people, at least when we first started in 2012, it was more people would go in and strike twice, 3 times, and they'd back out. Then they would kick and they would back out. The transitioning isn't what it is today, where it's more of an art. The micro transitions were very limited. So when I would watch, and they would say it's a 25-minute fight, I'm like, we need to just work on the movements that comprise most of the transitions that are necessary to fight. So I found that mentally extremely stimulating. And working with the fighters was way easier for me than working with other wrestling coaches, because once they understood that I understood, they just treated me like a peer. They didn't treat me like an interloper. But in wrestling, initially, the coaches were not excited for me to be around at all, and it were quite difficult. And Javier Mendez is the person who transitioned me through, not like feeling grateful to be included, but not feeling like I belong to it's okay. Like I belong, I should be here, I should do what I'm doing. And I remember the very first fight I cornered, we were in Monterrey, Mexico, and Javi, we get there. Javi doesn't say anything to me about what to do. Not one word. Not, we're going to go out there, you're going to carry the bucket, you're going to carry the stool, nothing. And so I'm just watching. Everybody's very nice to me. The Reebok people, the gear people were super excited. I'm like, why are you guys so excited? They're like, you're the first woman who's actually cornering. That's part of it. I don't know what Javi had said to him, but as we're walking up and the music's playing, and Alejandro had, some music I was unfamiliar with, Javi looks over his shoulder and says, whatever you do, don't yell over me. And that was all the instruction he gave me the whole time. So I was super nervous, but Javi transitioned me through all of that. And the next day, do you remember who was in the corner, Javi, from Jackson Winklejohn? Was it Mr. Coach Jackson, or one of them were in the corner with it? We're in our green room.
They were both there. I don't remember who was in the corner, but it was Mike Winklejohn and Greg. They were both there.
One of them, the next day, I was waiting to take the transit, and he came up to me and he said, "You don't know me," he said, "but Javier Mendez told me that you're one of the best, if not the best, wrestling coach he's ever met." And he goes, "And people usually don't tell you that when you're in your career. It's only afterwards. But I wanted to tell you now, that's what That's what Javier Mendez said about you. So after that, I was like completely comfortable. And I think the next fight I cornered, Javi wasn't with me. I was in Croatia, and it was me and Mowgli. And Mowgli was supposed to be translating, but Mowgli couldn't translate English with a European accent. So I had to translate the English to Mowgli, who then translated to Alejandro. I mean, we were crazy. But right as we got ready for the fight, it was just not maybe 45, 50 minutes before we were going over, I said to Alejandro Mowgli, hey, where are your notes from Javi? Because I'd flown in late from a national wrestling event and I wasn't there initially. And he said, I didn't ask Javi what he thought. I was like, so I immediately text Javi. I'm like, Javi. And he said, hey, this that whistle is known for this leg lock or something.
Leg lock.
Yeah.
Is a leg lock.
Yeah. And I'd never seen it before. Yeah. And I'd never seen it before. So I videoed it real quick, looked at it real quick. And then as we were walking in the lobby of the hotel, I made Alejandro stop. And I showed him this motion, this movement that we'd been practicing every single time he worked with me, but told him this is what he was going to have to do. So when you watch the fight, the first time he turned the way people traditionally do into the closed side of their body where their legs crossed. I'm like, no, open side of the body. Then he turned the other way and then it was all over. In fact, the kid freaked out and insisted that Alejandro had greased his legs. And I always would make Alejandro do a series of movements where he'd end in the splits and pressure forward from the splits. And he knocked him out. He got broken down into the splits and he pressured forward and he tapped out from Alejandro striking on him from the splits. And that's Cormier texted me right after and said, that was unbelievable. You just really did a great job there.
I'm sure they're watching you. I'm sure DC is watching you because he gave you the ominous dominus, he crowned you. So, he's like, this lady's legit. So now he's going to watch and make sure he gave the right word. And he's going, oh, it's okay, good. It's still working. Okay, good. Javier's like already sold. He doesn't have to double check. He knows. He's seen improvements.
If there was anything I needed to talk to her about, I would talk to her about.
Right. Straightforward.
I rarely said anything to her because there was nothing that needed to be said. Only very, very few instructions. The way I coach myself and the people around me is I don't say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. I let them be who they are because they will be able to grow instead of growing how I want them to grow, they're going to grow how they want to grow, but they're just going to grow within the same area, and that's the way I believe. I don't believe you shortcut anything on anybody. Let them grow. Just there's certain things you have to tell them, but most of the things you don't. If they're good at what they do, you leave them alone. That's the number one thing I can say is if they're good, leave them alone. Only certain things that they need to know that they may never know, you have to let them know. But if they, you can't teach somebody how to coach, you just have to acknowledge what they have and let them grow. And what I saw in her was incredible. So I really had to say anything.
That's high praise.
But that's what Javi's all about. I mean, the beauty of Javier Mendez is sometimes when you go on these fights, it's supposed to seem super glamorous, but there's a lot of sitting around. So you're sitting around with the same people. And Javi would sometimes say to me, I was thinking about this, Carolyn, and now that I've thought about it, and it might have been from 2 weeks ago or it may have been from 4 years ago, he'd say, I've done some thinking and I probably should have done this, or I could have handled this better. But really, in the end, this was my doing. And I felt so much comfort from him that because he wasn't ever going to tell me something out of not wanting me to beat him or not wanting a woman in a wrestling match to out corner them, which is what I'm known for. I'm a very good corner because I don't get emotional. I'm telling them literally, you need to, like with Alejandro, I'm not screaming a piece of technique. I'm like, contract your left calf, make a 90-degree angle, shift your weight. And so he knows what those things mean in terms of his movement. But Javier Mendez is responsible for that. There'd be no way I'd still be coaching wrestling or anything if it wasn't for Javi, because he gave me that support. Because every time I turn around, there's always something. I mean, at that same fight in Croatia, they had some problem with the customs with the Reebok gear. So when I got there, I was late and everybody was in there, every single fighter. And I walk in and it's no place to sit. So I'm just leaning against the door jamb on the phone. And this guy, this coach, an American coach there were some of those nice Polish fighters were in there that been at AK, and but everybody's cutting. So, it's just kind of a wave. And he's like, lady, hey, lady, do you know, are you supposed to be in here? Do you know where you are? And I looked down and I said, oh, is this the room where all these men are going to be taking on and off their clothes and putting on second skin? And he said, yes. I said, yeah, I'm definitely in the right place. And then everybody started laughing. But, everywhere I would go, I would hit that, even when there'd be new people working the fight for the UFC, and Javi would ask me to fill out all the forms. I'm like, he said, put yourself down as chief corner. You're wearing the mic. And sometimes it would be the other corner, but he'd say, write this down. I would go and they would have still scratched it out and move it. And then I'd have to say,
it even goes so much as I got a few high-level wrestling individuals contact me stating that, hey, do you know this lady? And I said, yes. Well, do you know she's out there claiming to be an AKA coach, wrestling coach? I go, well, she is. And then they're like shocked, like, huh? I go, well, she's good. What can I say? She's with us. She's AK wrestling coach. I'm proud to have her, and that was the end of the subject. That was it. They didn't ask no more. I didn't need to say anymore. I just said, yes, she's AK representative for damn sure. And she's a coach. Yes. Yes, 100%. And that was it. But I did have a few of them question, her wrestling ability and credentials, and hey, I don't know about credentials, I don't know this, but I know ability, and I know a great coach when I see one, and that's her. So that's it. I stand by it.
Javi took me over that hump, and now it's not really an issue anymore. When I go this past weekend, I was coaching at Senior Nationals US Open, and they had 8 mats for the highest level, the Olympic level. And at one time, there were 7 competitors on the 8 mats that I coached growing up. I got teared up because I didn't realize it. Scotty Kiono came over and looked at me and he goes, Coach, look. And so now it's not really an issue with people anymore, but Javi got me through that. And he made me go from feeling, I don't know what the right word, to like, Javi didn't like pet me on the head all the time. I just went, if Javier Mendez thinks this, then that's the way it's supposed to be. And I don't need to, if somebody else doesn't like it, they could take it up with Javi or Daniel. And there was one other event, Sean Bunch, as many of the fighters stayed in my home for a period of time. I had a big house and my kids were, basically at college except my youngest. And this person who was associated with Daniel sent me a series of texts that, were highly, wildly inappropriate. And my son had showed him to Bunch, I think. So anyway, that guy came back to AKA and Daniel was coaching and he called me over. He was sitting against the wall at the end of practice. And he said to the guy, hey, listen, I don't want you to be hassling Carolyn. And he said, oh, we're cool. And Luke was standing there too, leaning in, and Javi was sitting over. I don't know if Javi heard the conversation. And Daniel said, hey man, I don't want you to text her. I don't want you to send her any more pictures. He goes, I know, she's the first lady of wrestling. Daniel said, I don't know about that. And I don't know how she did it, but she's the first lady of AKA when it comes to this practice. And I'm telling you, don't ever speak to her again. And that was great. And I can't even imagine the number of times that I heard a story once from somebody about Luke standing up for me in a situation. Once one man said something weird to me, Josh Thompson popped him, but once those guys did that a few times, then it was so much easier for me. And now I just do it for myself. I'm like, if you want to talk to me about, you don't like what I'm coaching, can you tell me what your criteria is? Ever cornered a fight, ever, won Super 32. And I just go through all the ever cornered you, ever been a US world team coach, ever, so I don't mean to be whatever, but.
No, you've done great. You've got the credentials. You've got a lot of credentials. You're working with some of the best coaches in the world. And, Hob just sees it as business every day. He doesn't think about his allocates. He just moves forward and looks for the win and improving on his fighters, as far as I've got to observe. And when you have the camera and I'm filming him, you watch frame by frame. You're watching in 60 frames a minute. So you're seeing somebody's movement And once in a while I'll catch something and I'll tell him, not very often. I'm like, I see this because I'm looking at the detail of the film. If I was just an observer, I don't think I would look at it the same way. And you're probably looking at it through your lens and your analytics on the way the muscle and the movement, all of that is. But it's an interesting sport because it's not like you're teaching Taekwondo where it has so many kicks per belt and this and that. It's an always evolving thing. And I guess it does come down to the individual. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not make it up as you go, but it's like you can kind of anticipate what's going to happen next fight. And I don't know, what would you say the difference between when you started this and now? How much has changed in coaching this sport, if much?
Well, I mean, it's getting harder to stay ahead of the game because everybody's catching on to the same thing. You need to be able to wrestle. You need jiu-jitsu. You need Thai boxing. You need boxing. You need some Taekwondo here or other martial arts, you know, Kung Fu, whatever you need. Everybody's catching on to all that. So it's just a matter of the right athlete, the right team, the right athletes, I guess, because you're talking in team, and the right coaching, you know, and that's what it comes down to is that. Then as far as winning the fight, it really comes down to game planning. You know, game plan is a big part of it. A huge part of MMA is game plan, not the better athlete. It's game planning, you know, because, you know, that's how it's like, that's why you value this MMA. And I always refer it to chess, because when you come in and you play chess, you just make the wrong move, man. You're done. It isn't like in boxing, it's more the sweet science. With there, you know, it is basically the better athlete, this and that. So it isn't as much game planning, you know, in boxing. It's more the sweet science. You know, this is more, you know, attacks and how do you attack? What do you attack with? Because if you screw up, you're done. Like what Carolyn's been able to do with the leg lock guy is, you know, she changed the stance and what she did. Without that, you know, we'd have been done. Alejandro would have been done. He'd have tapped. He'd have been done. But because what she was able to do on the spot, just change it, you know, and that's we're coming into that age where it's not going to be about, you know, this and that. It's going to be about coaching and athletes.
Mindset.
And I think also too, one of the great things about AKAs, at least my experience with Ron Kessler and Javi, is that even though there's an opponent coming, they're still Javi's still working on perpetuating or moving forward the athlete's actual skill set in the discipline. You know, if they're striking or something, I mean, we have to make some switches, get ready, game plan too, but he's also furthering them. But a lot of people go like this, and then they just focus on what they think is going to be the key thing in the next time, you know, or instead of getting better at what they're already doing. And I think that's one of the big differences with Javi. If you have any more of those videos you can pull up, you can see some where the athlete is actually doing movement and then they compete and they do the movement so much better than anyone else. It's incredible. I think there's some film that actually Javi took of me with Carson Manville and Alejandro over before UFC something or other, the last card Luke was on. And it's in those links that you have, but that's really what's going on when you're asking people to make a pattern or movement. You've got to make it so that it's going to fit into the game plan of a fight. So if you have somebody move 7 to 11 times with the understanding that it's somewhere between 4, 5, and 7, they're going to force that person to step in such a way where a strike or a takedown or a kick is going to be in the right spot. But they have to practice that pattern. Otherwise, they just go out there, they sort of follow people around, standing 180 degrees to 180 degrees. And those are hard fights to win. It's a long time to stand in front of somebody without a pattern or a plan.
I've noticed that Javier doesn't do it so much in words as he picks somebody who's a great stand-up guy, and he'll put a wrestler against him who's a little afraid of getting hit or hesitant and make him face his fears. So I won't say all of it, put it all out there, but he finds the right combination of sparring partners to evolve that fighter so they're able to deal with that opposition when they go into their fight. It's not like, like a leg lock guy like you just helped with. Sometimes, and let's go back early, Hoist Gracie, everyone was watching like, once he gets that choke and it's over, like that was like already a given. Somebody was going to lose. So if there's a leg lock guy and your guy hasn't trained for it, we're going, uh-oh, all he needs to do is get the leg lock. You know?
I so knew that we were in trouble at that Croatia fight. I mean, literally, we're in the lobby. People are walking down the hall. The UFC people, Alejandro's notoriously late. So he's trying to shove him down. I'm like, wait, you got to hold 2 seconds. And I'm there doing it in my blue jeans. I mean, I wasn't even in fight gear yet. We hadn't even left. But I made the whole place stop because I knew we would be dogged, if we hadn't addressed that right on the spot. There'd be no way. And then when I think back on AKA and I think about all the fight camps, to me, I remember one time Daniel told me before maybe his second to last fight or his last fight, how he was just so much enjoying the fight camp and he was so sad. And I said, well, of course, because this band of brothers, this group of us may never be together again for the focus of you and all these things we love. So when I think of all those things, the one memory I have, it's probably my favorite, is we were sparring and Alejandro was sparring Sean Bunch. USA Wrestling calls Sean the fastest man on the planet for good reason. And afterwards, Javi always wraps up. And sometimes it's short, like, good job, clean up. Sometimes he really feels he wants to say something. And he said that day, I remember there were a bunch of people in the room, and he said, I saw today something I never thought I would ever see. And that was Alejandro stop Sean Bunch's wrestling and also take Sean Bunch down. And he said if it wasn't for short stuff back here, that would have never happened. But he was way more flattering. But then I knew that because there really wasn't anybody else helping. There was no confusion on anybody's part that Alejandro and I had worked a long time to make him a wrestling savvy. Probably if he'd kept going the way we initially thought he was, he probably would have, ended up being in the top 5 or so. But the component of wrestling, I checked that box for sure. I did my part, and he could do that. And Javi, said it. And it was really kind, because a lot of times people, they're not really good at giving stuff away like that. And that was one of my favorite memories at AK.
Javier is not over there telling everybody, attaboy, way to go every day. Praise comes when it's due. It's not free. You better bust your ass if you're even going to get a little bit. At the same time, he's not being highly critical either. He's being right there in the middle. Just to look at the evolution of grappling since you started AKA, how many coaches would you say from the grappling thing from the beginning of the early UFCs when you started training fighters off till now, not to name them all, but like how many different grappling coaches, whether they were BJJ or wrestling, you think you went through till now, 2021?
Not that many. I can't, less than 10.
Right?
Yeah, less than 10.
That's not bad.
No.
That's pretty good. That people stick around where they get results. That's what it is. So are you going to be coaching any other fighters here soon, Carolyn?
Oh, as soon as I get back to California and we can be effective in the gym again, I think in a manner where we have regular practices, and I'll be back on Tuesdays. But until then, been in Northern Virginia for COVID, and there's no fighting here. Ryan Hall has a gym close by, but it's predominantly jiu-jitsu, and Wonder Boy's about 7 hours south of me. And Derek Brunson, I was down in Wilmington, North Carolina, doing a clinic, and I went over and saw Derek and those guys. But there's not really fighting here. Not Angela Hill, but there was another woman fighter who was working with a man out of Maryland. And I think Kat Zagano did too, but they don't hold their camps there. So, my hope is as soon as we're able to go back to the gym normal, then I'll come back out. And if there's somebody who wants to work with me, then I'll do that. I'll fly out or I'll stay in my house there and do that. But it's fighting and wrestling are two different things. Wrestling is a sport where a teenager of any ethnicity, any weight class, any gender can become a better person by participating in the sport. Fighting is like, how do I say it? It's like this great athlete is putting everything on the line. And a lot of wrestlers want to be fighters, but they don't really know what fighting means. There's been a couple of times where I've said to Javi, I think we need to go ahead and let this wrestler spar to see if they really want to fight. Because
your one wrestling coach, John something, I forgot his name.
John Hall.
John Hall. Yeah, yes. John Hall. You asked me, what do I think of him? And I said, I don't know yet. I'll let you know later. I'll let you later. I told you he'll never make it. Yeah. Never make it. And I don't know what happened after that. I think you and him parted ways, or he went his own way or something. But you asked me what I thought, and I said, no, he doesn't have it. He does not have it. And not every wrestler can be a fighter. Not every fighter can be a wrestler.
I think the one wrestler that I really knew early on when he was in high school would be a good fighter was Mark Climaco. And then Mark, I had coached him when he was, up through high school, and then he was training. And then I said, hey, I think maybe you want to go to AKA and have Javi coach you and get better. So, a lot of the guys you can tell do, but a lot of the college guys, they come and they're just not ready to do anything else. So they think they're going to fight. They think there's going to be the same crowd of sort of sycophant people that are involved in D1 sports who sort of suck up to the kids. And there's really no sucking up at AKA. In fact, a lot of people will complain to me. They'll say, well, I've been here for 3 practices and nobody's talked to you. Talk to me. I'm like, I think I sat here for 8 months before I said hi to anyone. I was the first one there. I was the first one there and the first one to leave. Nobody ever had any impression of me I wasn't trying. I wasn't there because they were men and I was a woman. I wasn't there to stay afterwards and get a picture. I never asked for anything. But some people think they're going to come, then they expect Javi to, come walking in from his office and go, ta-da!
Greetings!
And it's not like that. And Bob Cook is definitely not like that. And,
How will you notice?
Like,
good.
Mark Climaco is now 5-0. He is 100% a prototype for what the new evolution of complete MMA fighters should look like and be like. Mark Climaco has it all: boxing, Thai boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. He's the complete package. He's got the mental. The only thing that he has going against him is size. He's a little guy, but other than that, he's got everything, and I'm expecting him hopefully another 4 or 5 more fights, and we'll ship him off to the UFC. We'll see, maybe sooner, but I would like to try to get 4 or 5 more fights from him, and then we'll be knocking on the UFC's door soon. But Mark Climaco is a perfect example of someone that's starting now that started as a young boy, not a Division I wrestler coming into MMA. He started as a young boy, and a lot of the great up and coming stars, future stars, are going to do what Mark has done. They're going to be as little boys and growing up within the system and learning the system and learning to wrestle, and doesn't have to necessarily be an Olympian, doesn't necessarily have to be a world champion boxer or K1 champ or none of that. It just has to be specific to the sport we're training in, and that's MMA, and that's what Mark Climaco has been doing, and that's why he is ahead of the game.
That's it. I was going to ask you, like, how many evolutions have you seen? And before I say that, it's like when I used to have a gym, Jake Shields and a couple other fighters used to tell me, wait till you see what's coming here in 5 to 10 years. Because he was like, he could look down the pike. I couldn't see it as a civilian watching the fights, just a guy sitting on the sidelines, until I'd watched it enough. Like the next generation, what have they percentage wise, was it like stages, like now they're 25%, 50%, 100% better, like between decades or 5 years? I mean, how has the evolution been since the beginning of?
I never paid attention to that. I just, percentages or whatnot. There's difference. There's a different level. And I just call it levels. I don't want to say 10%, 15%. It's just people are, it's like playing chess. They're learning how to play chess. They're learning all the moves. They're learning what a pawn does. They're learning what a rook does. They learn what a bishop does. They learn what a knight does. They learn what a king does. They learn what a queen does. And they're learning all the pieces. And if you understand chess, then you understand the mentality of MMA. If you don't understand chess, then you're going to have someone explain it to you because it's a little bit more difficult. But if you do understand chess, it's easier to explain MMA.
In the wrestling world, Aaron Pico changed the mindset of wrestling. So when Aaron was in 8th grade, 7th grade, his father, Anthony, called me and said, hey, Carolyn, Mike Zadek from the Olympic Training Center contacted us, and we're considering sending him there to train. What do you think? And I said, I think we need to send them a request for information, like who's going to feed him, he's still going to box, what are we going to do? Who's going to train him? All this stuff. And we probably sent 80 questions, and 75 of the answers said, we don't know, but we'll figure it out. And I said, I think that's risky. It's risky in venture capital, which was my thing before. Startups, like, just wait and let somebody else's venture fail and take their, lessons learned and then relaunch. And I said, let's get his coach and bring him to California. So Valentin Kalika came and just trained Aaron for freestyle. He never had any intentions of wrestling in college. And I would be traveling around the country doing high-level wrestling camps, and people would say, Aaron Pico will never be a real champ unless he's an NCAA champ. I said, why? Well, that's just the way it is. Not in that kid's head. I'm not saying that Aaron's a perfect MMA fighter, but I've known Aaron a long time. And now I see people come along and they're like, there's a kid, Cody Chittum, Aiden Squire. They're like, I don't know if I really want to do the college. I don't know if I want to do the college grind for 8 months and get beat up. I want a career in MMA, or I want a career in Olympic Greco wrestling. There's not even Greco offered at the D1 level. So why grind that when I could just go to college and train with the world's best Greco people in Europe or in Sweden or wherever, right? So Aaron Pico changed that model. And even though, he's fighting, but for wrestlers, he changed that. And I think we see more people now thinking, I don't have to go to D1 school to be an MMA fighter, but I do have to wrestle. So how's the best way to learn that and learn all the other disciplines? And when people say to me, what do you think? I mean, my kid's really good at this. We're going to focus on this. I said, I think you need to focus on what you're not good at. He needs to learn the other disciplines and put himself in the situations where he's uncomfortable, because you get to someplace like AKA and you're a great wrestler. I mean, AKA is a great place because it allows you to be vulnerable. There's so many good wrestlers there that if you're a good wrestler, somebody's going to say to you, hey man, I wasn't good at that either. I wasn't good at jiu-jitsu. I wasn't good at, but so-and-so helped me, or I got better, or Javi taught me this. But people don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. And so if you can learn those disciplines as a child and learn that you're going to get your ass kicked, and that's part of it, and ass kicking makes you better, then you're going to be better in the D1 routes for wrestling, or any college route might not be the route people choose. And they want to start sooner when their bodies are fresher.
Yeah, there's more of a career if they're looking for the traditional college to get the degree, maybe, but ultimately, I think that if you're going to go into MMA, you might as well stick with MMA, because that's, Islam said it in an interview. He called it, he said, they said it was on a Russian interview, what did you get from AKA? He goes, my combat grappling got better. And he called it combat grappling, and he specified wrestling with punches and elbows and, things being thrown in your face. And that's where the differential was. That's what, because there was more of that there. Were you going to say something?
Well, the reason why he got better too is because he was actually in combat. It wasn't no theory. He actually had to fight his way to doing it. And the only best way to learn is to do it, and that's it. And it's like, if you want to be a wrestler, specifically just a wrestler, and be the best wrestler you can be, then you got to be where they're at. If you want to be a boxer, then you got to be where they're at. If that's all you want to do. You have to be specific to the sport that you're going to train to maximize, your effort, So, if you want to be a great MMA fighter, you can't be just a great wrestler. You don't have to be a great wrestler to be a great MMA fighter. You can be a good wrestler. Okay. You could be a good jiu-jitsu guy. You could be good. You don't have to be great, but to be a great wrestler, a champion wrestler, you have to be great. To be a great boxer, a good boxer, a champion boxer, you have to be great. But in MMA, you don't have to be great. You have to be good, which will make you a great MMA fighter.
And there's the mental part too. You have to be able to think on your feet for all the variations and all the stuff the coaches trained you, the muscle memory and the strategy. There's a lot more to it. There's several ways to end a fight. That's what makes it so exciting to watch. Well, it's been awesome having you on here, Carolyn. I'm going to put your videos, I'm going to let you say one more thing too, but I'm going to put your videos in the channel, and subscribe to Carolyn's channel for more on wrestling prep. And go ahead, Carolyn, what were you going to say?
Well, I wanted to say one of the other great things that happened to me because of AKA was the, kind of the bond with the Russian guys, right? With all those Russians and with Khabib. And, I was there when he first came. And I don't know if Javi knows this story or what happened, but 2018, 19, I was coaching Josh Saunders at the Junior Worlds in Slovakia, Tarnova, and Umar's cousin, Abbas Magomedov, who's now the Russian champ, the European world champ. He was a junior then. He's always like 20 years old. And I'm cutting Josh Saunders' weight, and Abbas acknowledges me. Like, he's like, I think I know you. I said, yes, and I had some pictures from AKA. Well, as I was cutting Josh's weight, I was crab riding him so he could pull my weight while with his weight, we're rolling on the floor. And the head Iranian coach came over and, vigorously stressed that he was unhappy with me touching a male. And I just looked at him. There was no other Americans in the room, but I watched Abbas and those guys were watching. And then I went to dinner that night, and, it's just one of those world things. You just have a coupon, you go in, you sit wherever, and I'm sitting and I'm on the phone, and that same Iranian and another Iranian official came over and stood over me, and they were calling people over, and I was being sort of, encircled, but I growled back. I mean, I was direct, like, get away from me. And the next day, Josh was struggling to get the last of the weight off. So, it's a stressful situation. It's the world championships. He's wrestling a year ahead of himself. And that Iranian man started to come back to me. And the Russian coach came over and said, do not speak to her. He was going like this. He said, do not speak to her. He goes, our brother. She our brother.
Wow.
And then they left me alone after that. And the Russians came over, Abbas and his guys, there were like maybe 6 of them, and all shook my hand. And then he had been communicating with Umar on Instagram, and Umar, had said something to him like, yes, we know her. She's okay. But it was great because it was and everybody saw it. Everybody saw it. It was in that room that the Russians didn't think it was very cool that he was picking on the.
That was nice of them to stand up for you. Well, Javi, it's wonderful to see you again. AKA, it's on fire. You're waiting for the great opening. I always bring that up. What, you're 25%?
If we stay 25%, we're fine. So
yeah,
that's just a matter of other things. But it will survive at 25. So most businesses will. So of course, we want it to be completely open, but things are going good in the right direction. More people are being vaccinated. If I'm not mistaken, we're getting close to almost half of California being vaccinated, which means that probably more than that's already, because I believe under 16 years of age, they're not vaccinated under 16 years of age yet, as well, what I've been told. I could be wrong on that, but if that's the case, if over half have been vaccinated, they said almost 20 million, 15 point something million have been fully vaccinated, and 5 million point something in the second shot. So that leaves about 20 million, right? And then how many people are under 16 years of age? So if you're taking that into consideration, we're almost fully vaccinated.
And they're saying out here that they're going to let 14-year-olds in the next couple of weeks start 14. They're going to drop the age to 14, at least on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, either way, I think we've seen the last, hopefully the last part of any shutdown. Not many people can survive another one.
Now you're good to go.